Well, right now we're talking about it's a hybrid multi-cloud world. Data platforms today are re-architected for a cloud-native era. Cloud has become core of data strategy to accelerate from idea to experimentation, and artificial intelligence has started delivering value to some of the early adopters. Well, right now, for our current topic on multi cloud and AI panel discussion on multi cloud strategy in the digital era, wherein we're going to be talking about AI powered multi cloud strategy, modernizing information architecture for artificial intelligence, the value proposition of Kubernetes and the cloud native technologies, achieving interoperability, mitigating challenges in the multi cloud environment, using open technologies to create fast and consistent customer service. Ladies and gentlemen, for this, we've got our panelists. First up, Gabriel David, Chief Information Officer, LCC Group of Companies. Well, Gabriel is a well seasoned head of information technology with over 20 years of experience working in different industries such as retail, health, medical, transportation, and logistics. A strong business and information background with proven ability to implement technology based solutions aligned with core business strategies. Our next panelist joining us is James Indino, the Vice President Information Technology, Chong Hospital. Experienced Vice President Information Technology with a demonstrated history of working in the hospital and healthcare industry. While James is skilled in negotiation, business planning, ISO 9001 to 215, analytical skill, and IBM DB2. A strong information technology professional with a graduate school focused in general management program from the National University of Singapore. Well, we're also joined by Pramodh Rai, the CTO of Hmlet. Pramod's experience comprises building and scaling technology products as well as teams for early to mid-stage startups across Southeast Asia. Well, Pramodh, through his journey, has cultivated high-growth strategic initiatives with business astuteness and driving group-wide impact with measurable results. Also joining us is Rajan Kumar, the head of digital lab, Cyberjaya DHL. Well, Rajan holds the PGPX from the UCLA Anderson, USA, and the APSM from the IIM Calcutta, India. Rajan's a specialist technologist certified enterprise architect. Rajan has more than 19 years of strong IT experience, varies from platforms to technology, and Rajan owns a consistent track record of increasing market share, organizational potential, profitability, and product value within the global markets. And this entire conversation and panel is going to be moderated by Sachin Tonk, the Director, Data and Privacy Operations, Standard Chartered Bank. Well, a technology leader, Sachin, with 17 plus years in delivering data and business intelligence solutions and products by engaging agile and waterfall methodologies. Well, Sachin's seasoned in program and project management in banking and consulting industry, a diverse professional exposure in international settings across India, Singapore, United Kingdom, and the Middle East. Well, ladies and gentlemen, also if you have any question for our eminent panel here today, do remember to post it on the Q&A tab on your screen. We'll pass it on to our moderator and our panel if time allows towards the end. Once again, a big thank you for joining us, everyone. You may, as I can see, all of you have already put on your screen and you may unmute yourself now. And a big thank you and welcome to the World Cloud Show, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, Pramodh, for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavna, for the lovely introductions and setting up the stage. So much fiery. So you have put me on the spot, by setting
Sachin,
up that.
I'm so sorry. We're not able to see your video. If I may just confirm with my panel, can we see his video? Yes, now perfect, Sachin.
Okay. So first of all, thank you, Bhavna, for the lovely introductions, and you have set up the stage on fire already. So thanks a lot. So without respect of the time, and we don't have too much time, so let's jump into the discussion quickly based on our lovely and amazing panelist. The way I would structure this whole thing is that I will ask some of the questions which are kind of will be a bouncer or surprise to our panelists. So let's see how they react, and then followed by some of the Q&A from the people who are listening to us. So I think everybody understands that this is very unprecedented time, uncertain times, lot of chaos going on in the world, and all credit goes to COVID-19. And COVID-19 is the biggest digital disruptor. People were thinking that technology people are the real savvy, but COVID-19 has defeated us quite substantially. So the $1 million question to start our discussion is, why cloud strategy is so important now post COVID-19. So I would like maybe Pramod to start the discussion, and then I would like to get the views from every panelist. A few minutes of each, because everybody's perspective is very important.
Okay, sounds good. Just to confirm, can you hear me? Am I loud and clear? Cool. So the question is, why cloud first is so important post COVID-19? And before I answer that question, I think some of us may want to mute. There's a bit of echo going on. Awesome. So I I've been working in startups pretty much for the past 6-7 years, right? When I went to school, we were already starting off cloud first. And now it's just accelerated to the extent where any discussion that happens is just by default. For A, should we use AWS? For B, Google Cloud Platform. For C, Microsoft Azure. Everyone has their strengths and vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. I don't think COVID-19 has changed that so much as just accelerated the whole thing. So we have already been on a move towards the cloud from the start. If I were to go right back to university times, we started off with something like, say, cPanel. I'm not sure if many of us have used it, but cPanel was like the early version of what AWS is right now. And now it's just by default. We think cloud first. We don't talk about. There are some legacy sort of enterprises that we interact with, and I'm very careful about the use of legacy in front of enterprises, because I know many folks are working in enterprises, and there's a lot of on-premise deployment that's happened. But everybody is thinking of how can we migrate to the cloud, and COVID-19 has accelerated that conversation essentially. So all the legacy software right now, we are in. I'm building property tech for Hmlet, which is a living and lifestyle platform. We built a property management solution for our internal team to digitize business workflows. And we study many of these software in the market. And we find that some of the leading ones, they used to be on-prem deployment. They have themselves started to drive their own customers to come onto the cloud. And those conversations have become a lot more keen when RFPs are being put out there. So it is just now second nature. It's like oxygen is like breathing. We are talking about cloud first. I've not heard of anyone in the past 1 year, even more than the past 1 year, talking about say on-prem deployment, especially in my world, which is startups, right? Everyone is on the cloud.
Said Pramod. I think I totally agree with it. I think Gabby, maybe I can move to you to get your perspective. Why cloud strategy is so much important, and on top of it, if I can pick up your brain on what do you think are the key challenges on implementation of cloud from a data security and privacy perspective. Also, that will be also interesting thing to know for our viewers.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Just a few days ago, I was reading an article on the second industrial revolution, wherein machines were started to develop, cars, trains were manufactured. That practically, uh, the industry started to explode during that time, because people started to travel along, from one place to other. I mean, transportation was so effective that people can actually trade goods from one place to the other. It's This is not different from what happened during the second industrial revolution. So people can actually utilize systems not only in the workspace, workplace, but also outside that environment. People, especially now because of the pandemic, people can actually do can continue working to their houses, to their homes, right? And even just go on a Starbucks, spend the whole day on Starbucks drinking coffee, and yet you can still do your job. So it's the cloud right now has really been a very very important tool for organization to really continue operating their business. Just imagine, for example, this event. Okay, who would ever imagine that everybody right now would be joining a virtual meeting or a virtual event, okay, over the internet? Nobody thought of it before, but because of the pandemic, we're actually doing it right now. So there are a lot of changes that really happened because of the pandemic, as PR just mentioned. The pandemic really accelerated the people in moving to the cloud. Uh, People right now is only thinking about, companies right now is actually thinking about how to run their operations during this pandemic times. So it's really very very critical for a lot of organization because a lot of people are actually working from home. No, so they cannot stop their operation. Therefore, they have to proceed in doing their business. Now, in terms of the challenges in going to the cloud, well, there are a lot of things that really needs to be considered. First and foremost is what are the things that you can actually migrate to the cloud? What information are you intending to migrate from the cloud, which basically should be part of the GDPR. Also trying to understand on a cost perspective, will the cloud really be generate you cost savings on an enterprise architecture? No. A lot of challenges on certain organizations saying that since they have data centers, the traditional data centers, they're in a situation where they're trying to really understand the cost of the implications of having a hybrid infrastructure of an on-prem and a cloud setup. Is that effective? Will that immediately reduce the cost savings? Will it make IT or IT systems more efficient? So those are one of the challenges actually. No, and there are still legacy systems, okay, that we cannot migrate over the cloud. So that's why a lot of organizations, before they really migrate to the cloud, they do cloud assessments, right? They look at systems, they analyze the systems, and they make recommendations on what to do, for especially for legacy systems, on how to move it, or practically how to slowly move it over the cloud.
Thank you. Raj, do you want to share your views, followed by uh, James as well?
Sure, Sachin. Am I audible? Oh, perfect. So I think, thanks. I think Pramod and I can say this, Gabriel already covered a lot of aspect of it. I just wanted to give some more thoughts. Like Pramod well said that this multi-cloud is not new. I think this is something we need to understand. And this has been a part of the business strategies for the last several years. Yeah. But this has suddenly become very prominent considering the fact that, this COVID-19 has come and the business resiliency. I think this has become the one of the very, very important factor in the business strategy. Yeah. So I think just on that fact, why multi-cloud and why now? I think this is important to understand. So like mentioned, this multi-cloud means what we are talking about. We are actually talking about infrastructure as a service. I think I think in some of the discussion agendas, I have seen that the people will be talking about the Dockers and Kubernetes. We are talking about microservices. We are talking about almost everything that can go on the cloud. We are talking about DB, with storage, the low-code generators, the programming. In fact, some of the processes, those are also can be getting outsourced, like Mechanical Turk and all those. So I think everything, edge devices, I think this is the perfect example you can see in the technology space, which is kind of very much solely dependent on this multi-cloud. So question is again, why now? Yeah, because of this COVID situation, I think I told you that the business resiliency, I think this is one of the key important factor, and if you'll see this current situations, I will possibly put that into sort of into three buckets. The one bucket where actually the people they're still reacting, to the impact that happened to them. So there are businesses trying to survive, possibly trying to shift their business verticals, or still trying to cop up, what already happened. Right, that's not the one stage. The another stage I can say recover. I know that the business has already a loss. I'm not sure if I simply tell you about numbers. I think I've gone through some web, and people have been talking about the global GDP around 9.7% loss just because of the COVID, which is a huge amount we are talking about. So I think recovery is the key. So I think there has to be certain strategy that can get into a recovery. You can position yourself as a business that you can quickly adapt to the situation or quickly react to the situation, but at the same time you can recover and as well as accelerate. At the same time, you can also make your business resilient for any future pandemic or any future impact. I think these are the key. I think, as I tell that, the one important aspect is business resilience, but at the same time, I think what we are trying to cover in as the business resilience is two things. Is the skill gap, So once we are saying that, okay, in the business, I need an automation, I need a resilience, I need all this, I think automation is a key thing. And I'm not sure that all the businesses, I think ideally, they should jump immediately into the technology or jumping immediately into building capabilities which they can easily borrow, which is from the cloud. I think that's how I see. The one aspect is definitely skill, and the third, I think that's again in terms of infrastructure. I think the gap. I can also say this. So on the three factor, the skills, infrastructure gap, and considering the business resiliency, I think this. Saying that multi-cloud has become a new norm in nowadays. I think that's the one term we can say. Yeah, so I think that's really important. But in terms of the strategy, like I said, that I think it's really important to really not immediately getting into a immediate under pressure, the getting into the cloud. But at the same time, it is also important, like Gabriel said, what the data protections about the security, because that can, instead of giving you more benefit, it can give you much loss. I think you have to be equally careful about these data protections and those things. And then I think you need to make a very, very proper strategy around cloud and around partners. I think this is the key thing. Once you say this partners means, just remember these capabilities you're borrowing. So there are certain capabilities you can rely on. There are certain capabilities you can have your business stand on. I think these are really, really essential and the critical for the strategy.
Thank you, Raj. Final word from James on this.
Yeah, thank you, Sachin. The problem with being last is that anyway, I envy PR because he's a startup. He doesn't have to deal with legacy systems. I, on the other hand, am hired because I am hired there to transform. So it's a bit more difficult, if you may call it. So nonetheless, we're on our way. We've made assessments. We're rewriting our core application so that it can be ported to cloud. That's all I have to say because I know we're short of time, right? And you guys already said a lot of things that I wanted to report.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's the right way of putting in. So okay, we have set up the context and we have got the idea that why cloud, what are the basic challenges, right? So I think James now, and I hear you that the last one. So let me put you on spot now with our second discussion. So and I think that will be kind of little bit interesting question for everybody to understand. So what CEOs need to prepare with CIOs for implementing a robust cloud agenda to help organization leap into the competitive advantage. So what is your view on that?
Yeah, that was a mouthful, Sachin. Anyway, the gist of that phrase is that as CIOs, what do we need from CEOs as a help to push the cloud and multi-cloud agenda? First is from my end, I need to push the agenda for new funding, because even though there's promise of a lot of cost efficiency when you move to cloud, at the onset you need to shell out funds or money to hire consultants so that you could move or migrate to the cloud, especially with legacy systems. Second is that when planning comes, when business needs to move, one of the strategies that needs to be pushed by the CEO together with the CIO is that you have new capabilities. Since you're in cloud, you need to take advantage of that capability and sell new products, new services, so that you are able to capitalize on that strategy of moving into cloud or even multi-cloud. Third is the support that you need is you need support to push HR to hire the right new skill sets of people and support them by training and by hiring the correct people so that you could implement it appropriately. Lastly, for me, it's a really very important aspect is that the CEO needs to help the CIO push the cultural agenda, the shift of moving to cloud, especially if you have legacy systems, as pointed out earlier. Because moving to cloud is a whole lot of ideas. Even in my division, IT, I need to be able to shift their cultural thinking of doing code on an on-prem basis into a more cloud-ready basis. No more you need to push them to instead of checking back and forth, getting the code ready there so that you need to be able to minimize round trips. Yeah, so those are the four important things the CIOs need help from the CEO.
No, I think very well articulated. I totally agree. And one of the things which resonates with me very well is the cultural shift, and which is very easy to say, very hard to implement. So that's very well said. So the obvious question after this, which comes to my mind, and which I would like Gabby to comment on, is when it comes to the cloud implementation, what should be our key parameters or success criterias where we can say, hey, hooray, we have actually successfully implemented the cloud, and we should be getting the 5-star rating as compared to our competitors, and we can actually go and say that, okay, we have done a great job.
Wow, 5 star. That's nice to hear. Anyway, well, there's a lot of ways of to actually measure this your success story in cloud adaptation. But I guess what's important is that uh, we have to come back. You have to go back to the very reason why you're going to the cloud. Okay, there's a lot of reasons. Probably some of them would say it's probably cost. They wanna reduce cost of maintaining data centers or traditional data centers. The other one is probably operational efficiency. Uh, and the others are maybe flexibility. So there are a lot of reasons why people actually want to migrate to the cloud. But in a nutshell, there are probably three criteria where I could actually say that people should actually develop KRAs or KPIs for them to really measure the success stories of their cloud adaptation. First is financial management. Okay, so in financial management, you could start from the how much the actual cost that you are spending in terms of maintaining a data center, a traditional data center, versus a cloud setup wherein you're only paying OPEX base. So that's one of the KPIs that you can actually develop and measure in terms of cost. Another thing there is in terms of revenue. Is it providing additional revenue for the organization, that it brings additional value to the organization when you migrate to the cloud? Okay. The other part of this one is really to understand your really understand your ROI, return of investment. If you're spending that much but it's not giving value to the organization, then I don't think it's a successful adaptation. A lot of startups that haven't started on a data center, the traditional data center, and have immediately migrated to the cloud or use the cloud. Their basis for success story is basically ROI, because there's no point of comparing through the traditional data centers, right? The other one is basically operational efficiency. Okay, so but this is something that you have to really discuss with the business. You have to understand the business requirements of why migrating to the cloud. Then you have to list that all down. Okay, you have to basically also define certain areas that you could feel that you could actually immediately provide operational efficiency. Okay, for example, if your business would require a 24/7 operation, okay, and your IT cannot provide that infrastructure, then probably the cloud is actually a best option for you to go to. Okay, so those are the things that you can actually start to consider and write it down as your KPI, so that you can actually come up with a measurement to compute or to measure the success of your cloud adaptation. Another part of this one is I would say it's cloud security. Okay, cloud security and compliance. You also have to understand. I mean, not all people are migrating the cloud because there are certain organizations that would like to keep their data on the country, right? I mean, if I'm a bank that wants to go to the cloud, I mean, I cannot do it because there's a law that prohibits the bank to keep that the data should be kept on the country. So those are definitely challenges or things that you also have to consider in order for you to really see whether you are succeeding on your adaptation. You also have to understand the threats that are involved, okay, in a cloud environment. Okay, that's another factor. You have to mitigate those risks, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you go to the cloud, everything is secured. I understand the likes of Google, Microsoft have already in place all of the security systems, right? But it doesn't stop there. As an employee, you should continuously make sure that the data is actually secured. Okay, so those are things. But I guess one of the most major factors for other organizations is that in the main difference, I would say, is that some of the organizations are actually developing what they call the cloud governance. Okay, so the cloud governance is actually a group in an organization that practically does auditing on a regular basis. Okay, you set up. This can be a group of members from finance, from operations, and even customer service, right? Another factor here also is customer experience, not only on the external side, but also on the internal side. Okay, so once you practically have a good feedback from your customers, both internal and externals, then you're probably doing a good job as well.
Thank you for that. I would like to bring Rajan in for some perspective here as well, because I think Gabby has kind of summarized quite well. right? So Rajan, your perspective based on your experience as well. A brief one, a very short one, quickly.
Yes, yes, certainly. I think that there are two aspects. Of course, we are saying that bringing a multi-cloud here. I think we need to understand the gist of it is about bringing in new capabilities. I think that's how I see. I think the businesses. I think they should definitely the focus on their core and the values, and I think then you can simply surround yourself with the partners, form of a I will say the multi-cloud, which can facilitate additional capabilities which you demand. I think that's how I see. That's how I see. But at the same time, I think it's not easy. It's not easy because once I say, I think you know this journey is not easy. So I will say that there is always a few facts. I think the cultural. I will say, and this is more on a cultural that you can carry. And in possible in our company, I think the DHL, I think these are the kind of foundations we go. The one we call it a can-do attitude. So I think you need to have a very strong can-do attitude. That's yes, things can be doable, things can be sorted, and we can make it. Yeah. And at the same time, I think it's really important. I think the challenge is, especially with the strategist, I think it's critical that they really make their strategy that can be right first time. That's really important, because I think in this current situations, or in situations fail fast, or you might not have an opportunity to really fulfill so much. I think that's how I see. So I think from the strategy aspect, this is really critical that you lay down this multi-cloud the foundation, because of the fact that you need to focus on your core business values, and bring surround yourself with the partners with these cloud services that can enable, that can empower, that can automate the business demand which you foresee. Yeah, I think that's something. At the same time, I see is multi-cloud is still the same the same, I will say, architecture. Yeah, just one point here. I remember about the architecture. I think it's important to really the CIOs to bring chief architect, or maybe also the enterprise architects into this position, because intent is to not really foresee for a very short duration, but you can come up with some really long-term resilience strategy for your business. I think that's how I see.
Thank you so much. I think I would like to ask Pramod, or ask Pramod to pitch in here. So, Pramod, you have been throughout spending time on startups and all those things, and startups are quite ahead in the game of trying innovation, trying to quickly adapt, and all those things, rather than the enterprise and the more established organizations, which is more bureaucratic, and the processes are pretty big and long, right? So it is for you is a kind of clean slate, play around, do things as required. So how to future proof your organizations by kubernetes? So what is your view, and what is your experience, especially in startups?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the question. So I'll start by looking at how to future-proof your organization by any technology, right? Kubernetes is just one of them. So the best way to do it is to get your hands dirty, to play around with it, and see what value you can get. Be ahead of the game in terms of just trying things out and playing it. Have that culture, and the word culture is a very powerful word which we used earlier in the conversation. Once we have that, it becomes a lot easier to have a strong grasp on the potential of the technology and what it can do for your business, and also even thinking of new business verticals or lines, right? So somebody in your team or somebody across your team should actually be playing around with new tech all the time. That would be either in your free time or as part of your 20% that Google talks about. Depends on how you set it up. And I would say before Kubernetes, I would touch on blockchain and crypto, right? We have banks that talk about how CEO of banks that talk about how this technology is not good. And then over the past decade, you can see that it's slowly seeping into the mainstream, right? It's becoming more and more mainstream in terms of some banks are now starting to support purchase and sale of tokens altogether, which has been a huge change. And in that bank, like JP Morgan, where the CEO Jamie Dimon was talking about how Bitcoin is not a good tech and so on and so forth. There were people who were in the bank actively trying and experimenting with blockchain and tokens, right? And they are starting to use some of this technology. I'll say that's the right thing. No matter what the CEO is saying, have somebody playing around with the tech, and you can be ahead of the curve in using it. Specifically for Kubernetes, right? Same thing, right? Kubernetes developed by Google or Elastic Container Service by AWS. Participate in the community actively, be aware of key developments, train up, and leverage them at the right time. This future-proofing anything actually is almost impossible, and also in the dynamic nature of the web. We are barely onto Web 2.0. We're discussing Web 3.0. We're discussing decentralized web, and so on and so forth, right? How do you future-proof against those things? It's nearly impossible. Specifically for container tech, it's been around for about 6 years. The public release of Kubernetes was in 2015, and it's become almost a standard now for building and operating applications in the cloud. So most tutorials that we look at online, they just by default assume that you will check out or you'll be using Kubernetes, right? So it's just seeped into the ecosystem, and it's now making its way across the community. And what we really like about Kubernetes is that it has this the self-healing property. It is agnostic to various systems. You can scale it. You can put in auto-scaling properties. It's flexible. You can avoid system lock-in. Increase your stability through zero-time rolling updates, version rollbacks, canary deployments. It's well supported by a large community. All of these are actually guidelines that we look out for. Within Hmlet itself, we were having a discussion whether to use ECS or to use Kubernetes, right? So that's why I find this question to be very relevant, in the sense that play around with both and then decide on what is actually gaining a lot of traction in the community, and you will already have been in a point where you can start to leverage the tech before it goes mainstream. And by the time it goes mainstream, you're one of the early folks that's starting to leverage it, whether it be for something as esoteric as crypto and blockchain, or something as basal and key as container deployments, right? So that's actually, I would say, focus on the spirit of the answer. Kubernetes is just one tech. There's obviously a whole bunch of tech that we should be playing around with.
Thank you so much for the insights. You also touched upon culture, and James has also mentioned about culture. So let's bring James back into the to the wrestling match again. So James, as a senior leader, and expectation is that people like you will change and transfer and do the magic for the organization. So what are the key challenges you foresee, especially, or what will be your mantra to make sure that the culture change is happening, and it is happening at the right pace, so that the transformation itself is happening at a very fast pace, and the organization is getting the maximum benefit. So it's nothing to do about cloud. It can be for a digital transformation. It is for any kind of transformation. I am running a program for data transformation from globally for the bank. So I am also facing a lot of pushback on the culture at why do we need to do now. We have not been doing for last 5 years. Why now? Suddenly now? Why? So it is a lot of pushback. So how do you deal with that? And can you give some advice here?
Yeah, you campaign. Um, if you meet with people who are have an opposite view of what you're trying to implement, don't do that on plenary. Um, talk to them individually so that you could impart your ideas and he can give reaction without influencing others of his negative vibe. Number two, if you do plan to implement something, make it inclusive. Make them part of the solution instead of them um, waiting for you at the other end and throwing negative feedback on your project. So, top of mind, those are the things that I've come to do whenever change management needs to be implemented. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I think we are almost cruising to the end of our discussion, but I think I can take few more points to discuss. So I think one thing which I wanted to ask, and maybe Pramod, you can pitch in. This is all about synergies by mitigating interoperability challenges in multi-cloud environment. So, what's your perspective? And after Pramod, briefly, you share your views. I would like Rajan to also share his perspective on this.
Okay. So just to recap the question, the question essentially is synergies by mitigating interoperability challenges in multi-cloud. That's the question, right? And I think the best way to think about it is to move away from reacting to being responsive. So a lot of us are actually reactive in the nature. Somebody would go and spin up something on AWS. Somebody would do it on DigitalOcean. Someone else would do it on GCP. Then eventually it'll bubble up to some senior folks, and you realize that hey, our team's actually doing different things, right? So drive a clear segmentation between discovery and delivery. When you are doing discovery, it's okay. You're experimenting, trying out new things. Let's put a framework for how to try out new things. When you're doing delivery, there should be no compromise that, hey, this is the framework we're going to follow. And everything that we put out into production environment has to be localized, tested, instrumented, and following uh, this tech stack that we have defined, right? When it's pretty strict, people will follow that. But still, we need to give that freedom in discovery phase to try out different things on different cloud providers, find out the different capabilities that we can leverage, and discuss how we're going to bake it into our tech stack. If it is not planned, ultimately we are going to be reactive, and you will start having a lot of like leaky buckets in terms of your security issues, your performance issues, your availability issues, and so on and so forth, right? So if I have just like 2 minutes, which I understand we are running out of time, this is the main thing that I would tackle first. And all the rest is just downstream, essentially.
Thank you, Rajan.
Thanks. I think Pramod has already touched base, the things on this containerizations we are talking about, like Kubernetes and all. I think that's how I see as well. I think the important is for an organizations to really think about the technologies and these kind of architectural solutions ahead of time. I think this is important. Once I say this ahead of time, I think let's take an example, maybe in the containerizations only or the Kubernetes only. There are many options. You can go with the Google, which offers you Kubernetes, but you have a Docker, you have a this Amazon, and then you have OpenShift. There are many options. So I think the possible is that you find out a right partner. I think, and that varies across the different I will say organizations. Depending who can be your best fitment. So, but yeah, that's the one thing. But at the same time, your solutions and even the designing has to really think. Maybe take an example. It's a microservice, the aspect, because if you're using Kubernetes, I think that's the thing you can really move forward. So I think from this integrations, interoperability, the security, a perfect combinations, how this public, private, this the clouds, or how the public, private, on-premise, they can in a conjunction, they can work in a solidity. I think these are the key.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think in the interest of time, I just wanted to do a 2 minute kind of a small drill. So this is all about one word about cloud, or like one sentence about cloud from each panelist. I can start my key takeaway, or the lessons learned, or my experience on cloud. So one word for me when I hear cloud, it's all about operational efficiency, which Gabby also mentioned. So, Gabby, what is your one word when you hear about cloud?
Well, it's flexibility.
Fantastic. James, over to you, please.
Yeah, speed.
Rajan,
I think for me, it's all about intelligent automation.
fantastic. Pramod,
It's all about experimentation.
wow. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So I think it was great hosting you guys. It was lovely to get the perspective, different views, different perspective coming together. I think I have learned a lot, what I've not learned for last 6 months. I think this 45 minutes and half an hour, and I have made some long lasting friends as well. So wherever I am actually struggling in my organization to change culture. James is the one to go about measuring success about cloud. Gabby is there, Rajan for automation, Pramodh for future proofing my program in the organization. So wow, thank you so much, guys. So once again, I wanted to bring Bhavna into the scene. If do we have any questions from the people who are listening us, or can we take some questions?
Sure. So, Sachin, I was just checking on that only that currently there aren't any live questions from the audience, but I believe that that's because of the fact that there's been a lot of conversation already around a lot of key topics. So, I think you've
Yeah.
done a thorough job as a moderator along with your eminent panelists on the same, and you being an excellent person, professional yourself. So, Sachin, if you'd like any concluding remarks before we part ways.
No, I think it was great to see all my panelists and my friends coming together and taking time out. I wanted to say thanks to them. I know everybody is very busy. Taking time out, bringing together is very difficult. My key takeaway is the last one word from each of them: flexibility, speed, automation, experimentation. These are the amazing things which I'm taking away, and I'm looking forward to keep in touch with everybody and keep on learning from them. So thank you so much. Thanks, Bhavna, for the opportunity. It was very professionally organized and managed session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sachin. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, James. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Robert. It was a great, great session, and it was so good to have all our eminent panelists joining us today. So, once again, a big, big thank you to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Take
Stay
care.
safe.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Stay safe.